I'm going to go ahead and press record since it is 1 o'clock, and I'm glad to have those of you on here that were able to join us. I know that this time of day can be a little tricky for people, especially if they work outside the home, and maybe it's not nap time or nighttime wherever you are. I know we have an international bunch, this group, so that's very fun, but I know it also creates some challenges time-wise and stuff. So we can have a group conversation in the Facebook group about if the consensus is that this time works as well as any for everyone, or if we need to try and maybe alternate weeks and maybe do a night session every other week or something like that, just so we can hopefully provide the live session as a resource for as many of the members in the group as possible. But I'm excited for those of you that could hop on the call. I am going to just kind of go through some basic ground rules right now, just so you guys kind of know what the flow of this session is each week. And then I know many of you are on video right now, and pretty much it looks like almost everyone is on mute too. So just so you kind of know, one, you're welcome to unmute yourself at any point. If you have questions, you're welcome to use the chat box, and I'll try and keep an eye on that. But sometimes while I'm switching screens with like the Facebook questions box and things like that, it's hard to manage all the different screens. So if you have a question about something I'm saying or something that just doesn't make sense or you want clarification, please, please, please be engaged. This is way more helpful and beneficial for each of you if we're as interactive as possible. So this isn't meant to be like a lecture or any sort of like teaching that is impersonal or irrelevant for you guys. So I would love to hear any feedback, hear any questions that come about as we go through. And then otherwise, like I said, in the Facebook group, what my goal is each week is I'll kind of do a little bit of a recap from the email, but seeing that everyone already got the email, I just don't want to waste too much time on what you guys already have available to you. But if you have questions from what the weekly email was or what the little mini homework assignment was, please chime in and ask, because again, if you're having the question, chances are other parents are also probably having the question. So I would love to just make sure it's clear for everyone. And I know we're all able to see each other's questions in the Facebook group, but please feel free to share those here. So I'll do a quick little recap of some of the main objectives from each week that I want to make sure you have some comfort and confidence with in applying. And a lot of that is because over the course of the next 6 weeks, some of the same topics are going to come up starting right now in week 1, and then again all the way through week 6. Some of that's going to be like, what do I do if my kid only eats the Love It food? How do I get my kid to learn to like new foods and things like that, which those topics we don't actually talk about until closer to like week 4 and week 6, which probably is kind of like, well, that's what I need to know now. But the reason I structured this group coaching program the way I have, and the reason I'm talking about this just today, since it's week 1, and I just kind of want to make sure everyone has a common understanding of that, is because if we get ahead of ourselves and we start talking about how to get our kid to learn to like new foods, or what to do in the case of offering or restricting more Love It foods and things like that, and we talk about those things separate from the division of responsibility, I'll be derailing you in the direction you go. Because the most important thing we can do right now, which I addressed in the email for this week, is setting that feeding foundation. Some of you might be really familiar with the division of responsibility, and it's already common knowledge and something that you're working to apply. I know that just from emails and interactions with some of you, as well as comments that have been made in the Facebook group. I know others of you might have like never heard of the division of responsibility, which is absolutely totally fine too. So for those of you who are on the call, I would just kind of love to know, if you don't mind just sharing in the chat, if you know, like when I say the division of responsibility, does that make sense to you? Or is it something that is now familiar? Whether you just learned about it maybe from the email this week, that I shared some links about it, or maybe you knew about it already, it would be helpful for me to know kind of where everyone's at with that. Because again, starting with week 1, I want to dive into all the questions that came in, because I know that those are the real life application of what we're doing here, but I also want to make sure that we're all starting this 6-week program together with some underlying foundation that's similar, being the division of responsibility, because that's where the Love It, Like It, Learning It framework really blooms, is when we're able to use that type of feeding foundation. So I'm going to peek at the chat. Okay, Lindley, thank you for sharing, the basic concept. Sahel, is that how you say your name? You can unmute. Sorry, yes, okay, sorry, I just didn't want to butcher it. But member of the page on Facebook for a while, and that's where I've learned about it. Okay, awesome. Allison, familiar with it? It's difficult to stick with. Yes, it absolutely is, which I think understand the concept's awesome. Okay, thank you guys for sharing it. Just kind of, if anyone is not familiar, please let me know so I can give a little rundown. But again, I don't want to waste too much time on the call today going over things that I've already made available to everyone through like links in the homework and the email that went out. So with that being said, that's kind of the outline of how each week's call will go. I'll just do a quick recap of the email, and then we're going to dive right into question and answers, because most often what I find is clients get the most benefit from the real life application rather than me just kind of teaching on a hypothetical concept. So if you guys saw in the Facebook group, each week I'll post a post that says week, whatever it is, right now it's week 1, and then it'll say, you know, post your questions here. And I found that that just kind of helps me to collect all the questions in one place rather than having like 32 different threads going on that Facebook group. So I'm able to make notes in there of questions that come in by email that I think the group might benefit from, but you're also able to answer or ask your questions there. I'm not going to answer them unless it's urgent. If it's urgent, I would say do it in its own post, like some others did this week of, I can't remember how to pronounce her name. Kara, I think is how maybe how it was. C-A-R-A-H maybe. Anyway, she posted something last night like at dinner, which I loved, which was like, okay, I'm doing this, or I'm not sure if this is going well. So, okay, Kara, you're on the call. So I love that, how you like shared in real time, this is what's going on. If you have something like that, unfortunately, I can't always answer it in real time because dinner time for many of you is also the chaos of dinner time with 3 for me when my husband isn't even home. So I'm normally, well, as in never on Facebook at that time, but I will answer it as soon as I can. As soon as I get my kids down, I'm always checking. So I want to be available for that. But if it's a non-urgent question and more just something you'd like me to chat through with you, I would love for you each week to go to that questions post. So that kind of helps me know what questions we have going into this time. And then those are the ones that I give priority on the call. We'll start talking through those. And then as we have extra time on the call, feel free to chime in. You can put it in the chat box if you have a question as we go that's maybe kind of a one-off or not on topic with what I'm talking about. Just post it in the chat box and I will address that as well at the end, or kind of as it fits through it goes. So I know I'm a little word vomit right now, but I just want to make sure we have time, and I want to make sure that we're able to get to all the questions and things. But since there's some kind of bookkeeping stuff this first week, I just want to make sure everyone is on board and understanding kind of that setup. So I'm trying to see the best way so I can see everyone. Okay, so if you have a question, I can't have everyone on my screen at the same time since I'm looking at the other questions. But if you have a question, type it in the chat box or just unmute yourself and you're welcome to interrupt me at any point. But assuming, if anyone, does that sound good with everyone? Anyone have any objections, issues with all that? Okay, so now we will jump in and I will do a quick review. Oops, sorry, I guess I can't minimize that. We will do a quick review from this week's email. So the first thing that I would really like to cover, which I know some of you shared in the poll, but for this week's homework, again, it's laying the foundation for the division of responsibility and making sure all of you understand that you as the parent, your job is to decide what food is offered, when food is offered, and where food is offered. If you ever wonder, what should I be doing? Am I doing it right? Just kind of go back to that and be like, is this my job or their job? And if it's their job, it's determining if, whether, and how much they eat, which is going to be one of the main things we talk about this whole time, because most of us, the challenges that we run into within the feeding relationship is when we try and do our child's job, deciding if and whether and how much they eat, and they try and do our job, deciding what they want to eat, when they want to eat, and where they want to eat. As soon as those lines get blurred, that's when majority of the feeding concerns and challenges I see come up. Hey, Kara, if you don't mind, I think your mic might not be on mute. You're welcome to unmute it at any time. Let's see. I'm just trying to see where maybe Cassie is, sorry, I can't, real quick, let me just make sure. If I put it on everyone on big, I can see it. Okay. Kara, when you have a minute, if you don't mind double checking that yours is on mute, we all can empathize with noisy babies, but no problem, thank you. Okay, so jumping back into that. So for each of us, those challenges that come up are gonna be different in terms of where maybe that the roles and responsibilities within the division of responsibility haven't been done that way. But if you clicked on any of the links or read any of the articles I shared in the email from this week about the division of responsibility, you've seen why that's the foundation for feeding that I recommend. It's not my feeding foundation. It's been around since the 80s from an expert pediatric dietitian and feeding therapist. And ever since then, it's been researched again and again and again as the best practice. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends it, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. Pretty much every overarching governing board for nutrition or children recommend that as a best practice. And so that's why myself and pretty much every other pediatric dietitian I know recommend that as the gold standard approach. And so over the course of the next 6 weeks, we really want to look at how can we apply that in the real world, real life, being also with the Love It, Like It, Learning It framework. So we'll talk on that in a little bit more in next week's email. But that's why I want to make sure you guys already understand kind of the overarching division of responsibility, so that next week, as we get into kind of that what you feed, being the Love It foods, the Like It foods, and Learning It foods, you kind of understand where what you offer fits into the whole big picture. It's not only about what you offer. You need to, have a feeding routine with when and where you offer it. If you're doing it in front of the TV and things like that, a lot of those different dynamics can backfire as well. So as you guys have questions about that, feel free to post it in the chat box or on the Facebook group if it's over the course of the week, if any of the what, when, or where doesn't make sense. Then we kind of jump into the if, whether, and how much our children eat. And this kind of flows into, and this is actually something I didn't do last round of group coaching, is the quiz. I'm not sure how many of you have had a chance. I was going to hop on and look to see at the poll as of now. I posted a poll to see kind of where each of your kids fell. And I know many of you have already responded to kind of share if your child fell more in like the average picky eating. Looks like 6. Well, let's see. Okay, so a good number of you have so far shared, but if you haven't yet shared, it would be helpful for me to know how extreme or more average picky eating of a picky eater your child is. I don't want to call it normal because there's a lot of picky eating that falls into the category of normal, but it helps me to know because oftentimes the clients who struggle the most have children who are really extreme picky eaters. My oldest is one. So I have a lot of empathy coming into this group where like my second daughter, so my oldest is 5, in case some of you don't know this about me. My oldest is 5 and she's extremely picky. We've made a lot of progress with her, but she's definitely falls under the more extreme picky eater. And then my middle is very average. Like I love it because tons of my tricks work with her. Where my oldest, tons of my tricks take like months and years to work with her. So the verdict is still out on my third, but it's helpful for me as a dietitian working with each of you to know how extreme your kids are. And in the group, it'll be helpful for me to kind of be able to see based off most of the time, based off your questions, I can kind of tell, okay, where your child might fall. But it's just helpful to kind of know that. So if you haven't taken that quiz yet, I would encourage you to go ahead and do that, mainly because it just gives you some good food for thought on kind of where your child might be with their picky eating, especially if you don't see quick wins. And we're already seeing in the group, I love when you guys share, hey, this is working, this is awesome, this was our win, my kid touched edamame. I also love when you share, like Kara did, hey, I don't think this is working, what just happened, no one's doing anything, what do I do now? So it's helpful for all of us to see kind of the range of reactions that our families can have as we introduce the division of responsibility or further establish it if maybe you've already kind of been doing it with your family. But it's also helpful for you as the parent to not compare to one another because each of you is going to have a different value. And I don't mean value in terms of your child's worth, but value in terms of where on the spectrum and the range of picky eating your child fell. If your child is a more extreme picky eater, you might not see as quick and as many like obvious wins as someone who has a very mild to moderate or average picky eater. So that's why I just wanted to start out week 1 with having you guys do that, seeing that you all have already made your Love It, Like It, Learning It list. So now moving forward, you just kind of know you might have some of those obstacles to be against, or you at least know what areas in a more objective fashion of kind of like, okay, these are the ones where my child struggles more than in other aspects of feeding. So that can just be helpful up front. Did anyone, I would love to know if you want to unmute, but I would love to hear, did anyone find the quiz helpful? Was it insightful? Was it interesting? Was it totally not worth your time? I would love to hear if like that was helpful because that's something new I've done this round that I I thought based off other group members' feedback might have been helpful, but I would love to hear if any of you guys, found that helpful or anything. Okay.
I found it super helpful. I think I'm sure a lot of other people feel, as a mom, you feel like enormous guilt that you did this to your kids, that somehow you messed them up and that's why they're picky, or you didn't expose them to enough things. So seeing those behaviors that are sort of identifiable across a lot of others, I think is what's super helpful to me, and also to reassure my husband, this is, part of a toddler's life, and we can categorize it and sort of reassure ourselves that there is a path. Right,
exactly. And two, at any point, if you guys want to share, hey, I know that this question was one that my child responded this way at, with that preface, then you can share with me kind of how they're reacting. That's always helpful, because as you guys see, if your kids, had any more extreme picky eating, I'm assuming most of the ones on average, a lot of them might have been similar. I guess I should have put in a column of normal, because maybe there's some areas that didn't apply at all to your kid. But it kind of helps you realize where are the areas that my child maybe struggles the most. And that's going to be huge as we apply the Learning It framework in terms of how we introduce new foods to your child. And there's a lot of basic overarching recommendations that I'll share with you guys, but they can be made a lot more specific and thus a lot more successful in offering to your child if we see that, hey, this is an area your kid struggles. And so maybe we can approach, exposing them to new foods in a different way. So thank you, Allison, for sharing that. That's very helpful to hear. Did anyone else kind of want to share anything that came from taking that quiz? Oh, sorry, Sahel, I don't think I can hear you. It looks like maybe you're talking, but maybe because your headphones are in? I'm not sure. I should still be able to hear you. You there?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
I mean, it made me feel a bit better. I mean, I was thinking my child was really an extreme picky eater, but he's an average picky eater. I found some of them a bit difficult to answer. For example, my child is often willing to at least touch or taste learning eat foods. It really depends. Sometimes he even wouldn't let me to put the new food on his plate, and he asked me to just remove it as soon as he sees it. But sometimes he's fine. So it really depends. There were some of them that I couldn't really tell if he was, in the average one or extreme one. It can be moody.
Right. No, that's helpful to hear.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, and sometimes that will be the case where, with certain foods, especially if your child tolerates fruits, they might be okay with you putting a fruit on their plate, but maybe they are completely in an anti-meat phase and they do not want any meat touching anything on their plate. So kids can be so finicky like that, but I think like you said, it can be really helpful as a parent to kind of reassure, and Allison, you echoed this too, reassure ourselves this is normal. It's not that it's easy, but it falls within the range of kind of expected feeding behaviors and challenges. But I think, what I see again and again and again is so many parents can say, oh, my child's such an extreme picky eater. And that might be, but I think a lot of times it's actually normal. It just feels like, oh my gosh, when I'm comparing it to all the kale eating kids on Instagram, my kid's so picky. But it's in the big picture of, as a practitioner, my concern is I always want to make sure, do we have other things you're up against that it really doesn't matter what you do, those are going to be hurdles. And so we have to kind of be able to, and I think I addressed this in the email, we have to be able to separate out a little bit the behavior in terms of helping our child just know the boundaries and the behavior of, setting love with limits within the division of responsibility versus this child actually needs feeding therapy or else parents are going to be defeated endlessly and things like that. So that's why I think up front, it's kind of helpful for parents to realize the extent of the pickiness they're up against so we can kind of identify, are there underlying, maybe medical or feeding issues also at play that are making this child, actually extremely picky, if that makes sense. Lindley, did you want to share something?
Basically just touched on everything I was about to just say. So I agree with what you just said. It's just nice to have the quiz here, not only to know that my kid isn't as picky as I thought that she was, even though she is extremely picky, but she does also have a lot of average picky eating habits that the other children do.
Okay.
But, and it's also nice to see too, like on the vote that you did on the Facebook group, there's a lot of kids that fell into the category that my child did too. So I don't feel so alone.
Right. Well, I really do hope that, especially with this group dynamic, so much of it is so that we can provide support to one another, because we know how isolating it can be when we have that mom guilt and we think like, oh my gosh, what did I do wrong? We start spiraling down this trail of all the shoulda, woulda, couldas that we didn't do. And then we start comparing ourselves to these children who, truth be told, like may have had you could have done everything right and your child still could be picky. And there could be parents who did everything technically, not by the book, we'll say, I'm not going to say wrong, but just alternative approaches than what you thought were right at the time, and they have a kid who eats everything. And so I want to remove the mom guilt from this of, I'm a dietitian mom, like I should be able to, I worked at a pediatric hospital before kids. I thought I knew what I knew, and then I had my own kid, and it was very, very humbling. So I don't want there to be any guilt or shame here. I know mom guilt exists, but I really hope that we can just be really genuine with each other and, encouraging one another, but also sharing like, oh my gosh, this is hard. And whatever is hard about it, for us to, come up with techniques and tactics to kind of help you make the next step forward rather than kind of all of us mentally spiraling backwards. Because especially with average picky eating, extreme picky eating does take a little bit more strategy, as I shared, but with average picky eating, so much of it is us just having confidence as parents to do what we know to do and sticking to it. So I really hope that this group can give that accountability and support to just keep putting one foot in front of the next to establish that normal in our family with how we approach feeding. And so, we're not feeling like we need to teeter back and forth, because as we all know, as with any area of parenting, if we're inconsistent, our kids are going to milk that and capitalize on it to the end of us. So the more consistent we can be with feeding, the better. So that's really all I wanted to touch on from the email, just so we have time to go over the questions. But if you guys have any questions about the email or anything, one, you can always just press reply and let me know if something wasn't clear, which I think was one of the things that actually came up. I made a note in the group about with serving the meal together or separate. But I'm going to just go through the questions as they're listed so I can make sure that we work through them and get to everyone's questions. So sorry, I can't see everyone who's on the call at the time. So if you're on the call and I'm asking your question, feel free to just chime in. But Megan, it doesn't look like she's on, but it said, I think Megan was the one who said she wouldn't be able to. But anyways, it said, I'd like to learn what to do when your kiddo wants to keep going back for more of the Love-It food. How much is okay? Do we need to decide before the meal how much everyone can have? So I'll have to look. I think it's week 4 or 5 out of the 6 weeks that we will talk a lot about this. And again, I know that seems a little delayed because this question is already coming up week 1, but there's a lot of foundational things that I think can be helpful in kind of setting the stage for us to be successful in how this question is answered. That said, I'm happy to go ahead and answer the question right now because I know a lot of people are wondering it. And if you haven't wondered it yet, you probably will between now and a month from now. So in answer to that question, and I can share a blog post on this too within the Facebook group that I have. And the blog post is what to do when your child only eats Love-It foods. And that there's a lot, I don't want to take the whole time because I could, but I don't want to take the whole time answering this question because again, we'll talk about it in another week. But basically, if it's a family meal, we'll start there. If it's a family meal, I would say yes, decide how much everyone is going to have beforehand. So the example I always give is like dinner rolls, because most kids, maybe not yours, but majority of kids, and looking through a lot of kids or a lot of families Love-It lists, a lot of kids love carbs. And so they could just fill up on dinner rolls at dinner. We may or may not have dinner rolls at every night's dinner, but if you are offering dinner rolls, just be mindful of our aim here is not to restrict the child so much that they feel like they're being restricted. We want to think of just kind of common sense. I'm not going to make 5 rolls per child or 5 rolls for my one child. I might make 2. If I know it's a roll that like everyone really likes, I might make 2 per person. If they eat them, great. If they don't, no big deal. But that's kind of like an appropriate number. That said, at the table, speaking from life experience, when my daughter asks, can I have another roll? I always remind her, like, everyone gets 2 per person. And so she'll have her second one. And when she has her second one, if then she's asking for another one, I'd say, I only made enough for everyone to have 2. If you're still hungry, you can eat the other things on your plate. And sometimes my other daughter may say she doesn't want her second one, and she might say, hey, sister, you can have mine, and things like that. And then sisters are happy and getting along and things like that. But I wouldn't necessarily restrict it in that case, because it's the amount of time that's going to pass between you saying, like, that's the last one that we have for you, and someone else giving them hers is an opportunity for you to say, if you're still hungry, there's other things, there's more XYZ, there's more of this, there's more of this, if you're still hungry. So you're not like just pumping them with just that amount of food. Caveat to that is, if it's a food that you maybe would have to make more of, I would say don't. I pretty much always just make sure, sometimes we're not going to make enough and we're going to be like, oh, wow, I really should have made more. And then maybe in which case you go bring over a bowl of fruit or something different. But if you made something and then it's like, oh, I can go make you more rolls because that's all you want to eat. No, I would say decide in advance, because the biggest thing with establishing that division of responsibility is you want to own what you're in charge of, and you're in charge of what, when, and where. And so if the child sees that they can kind of push you a little bit more to be like, okay, mom will get up and go make me another one of this, it does kind of become short order cooking for that. And so I would say, in answer to your question, in short, if we're talking about at a family meal, decide in advance how many you think is appropriate and make that, and then just use the simple, 1 or 2 liner of, this is how many each of us get. After that, you're welcome to eat the other things that we have more of, but we don't have any more of that tonight. And then if they start getting upset, you can just very quickly say, I'm sorry, that's all we have. I know you really enjoy these. We're going to have these again when we have, whatever, another night's dinner or something like that. That said, there's like so many different scenarios with if and when to offer more Love It foods. So I will link that to Megan's question in the post for week 1 questions. But hopefully that kind of starts to help answer, how much is okay. And then same sort of thing with like noodles, or really, it often goes back to starches. Normally our kids aren't like ODing on broccoli, but it normally goes back to starches. So again, just think of like what you think a normal amount would be. And then maybe next time you realize you need to adjust. I know there's certain foods that, like my daughter, this is probably an important caveat actually, but there are certain foods which you'll see on the menu. These one things, this is just the example that comes to mind. These Brazzy bites, they're like these Brazilian rolls. My daughter is literally obsessed with them. She would eat the whole bag. And they'll show up on a menu in I can't remember what week they're on the menu, but they're just like a fun little roll, and she's really into them. And at first, I think I made 3 per person. And I was like, oh yeah, that's fine. Well, I could eat more than 3 per person. My husband could eat more than 3 per person. And my daughter was always wanting more. And the reason I share this example is because we can adjust as we go. We may, only make 1 roll per person, and then realize like, okay, we're having this on a night where my kids just got home from swimming, and I know my husband would probably eat 1 too, and whatever you want to do, you can always adjust. But part of that is because in the setting up that division of responsibility with trust and control being like the basic tenets of it, we want to make sure that our children don't feel like we are using restriction as a tool to control them. And so this comes up in the post that I'll share on, what to do if your kid only eats Love It foods. But we want to make sure that we're not inadvertently trying to control the amount, which is our kids' job, by controlling what we offer, if that makes sense. So I don't want to only offer 2 of these little Brazilian rolls per person because I know my daughter wants 50. I want to give them an amount that's enough to kind of say like, okay, satisfy that love for this Love It food, but not so much that it's beyond excessive, but make them accessible. Because there's this one quote I love that says, permission plus accessibility equals discernment. So we think if we give our kids the permission and the access to these Love It foods, they know they have access to it, they know they have permission to eat and enjoy them freely. They're going to learn that discernment of like, I don't need 30 rolls at dinner. Or they're going to learn I don't need 30 cookies when I'm giving them. Again, dessert is like a whole nother topic we'll talk about another week. But I just want to encourage you with that, with Megan's question of how much is okay. Use that as kind of part of your filter of like how much is reasonable, and maybe I adjust next time and I do make more. They really said they wanted more and I'll adjust more next time. But that can help you to kind of gauge how much of things to make at a meal. And side note to that, which often comes up, and I'm going to get to the next question, is with fruit. A lot of times people are like, okay, if I put out the whole bit of fruit, let's see, what if something is in the fridge? For example, you just need to wash it. Okay, so I will answer that in just a question or in just a minute. But I'll just say it here. So say you're at a meal, all the rolls are gone, and your child wants fruit, and you didn't offer fruit. Sorry, no, I'm going to go back. I'm not going to use that example right now. But on the example of fruit and how much, it's also okay to say, hey, this is all the strawberries we have until I go to the store again. I don't want to burn up all the strawberries today. I need us to save a few for your lunches tomorrow. That's okay. That's not restricting. That's just like you budgeting your family's resources. So that's okay to like give your child a reason rather than you can't have more strawberries because you didn't eat your spaghetti. That would be like a form of restriction over how much of the Love It food they're allowed to have. On the note of what Sahel just mentioned, like something, if it's in the fridge and you just need to wash it, I wouldn't do it. Because again, it doesn't matter if it's carrots that are just in the bag of baby carrots and require no prep. It's if your child's asking for something else, they're learning to decide what is offered, and that's on you. So if they say, hey, can I just have strawberries? And you just have to go wash them and it's not hard. I would say, oh, strawberries are so good. Let's have them at snack. Done. That's it. And then go offer them at the next snack. But you need to honor what they're asking, show them that you hear it, but also show that you're in control of what's offered. Because as soon as a child thinks I get to decide what's offered and when it's offered, again, that spiral just can start. So I would say avoid doing that and just kind of bump it to the next practical time. Same the way if your kid's like, I want pizza. You may have a frozen pizza. You could easily pop in there. Don't do it. Just save the pizza and say, that's great. Let's have pizza together as a family on Friday and defer to the next kind of main time. So to go to Kara's question, Kara, I know you're on the call, so let me know. Sorry, these new contacts are crazy blurry, so I'm gonna have to like squint here, but I'm wondering what to do when kids ask for a snack right after meals. I've tried reminding them that they need to make sure their tummies are satisfied and that we won't be having a snack again until X time. Perfect, that is awesome. Then they say their tummies are full, they go play, and 2 minutes later, they're asking for a snack and they're saying they're hungry, and then they throw a huge fit when I say we aren't having a snack right now. Yes, very, very common scenario. So one, I love that when they're at the table and they're having the meal, you remind them, hey, that's fine, you're in charge of if and whether you want to eat, but we're not having a snack again until, XYZ. You can say a time, you can say in an hour, however you want to do it. And so they're going to say, okay, I'm good. And then when they come back, it's as simple as just saying the kitchen is closed. Say, I'm sorry, the kitchen's closed right now. We'll have snack again in an hour. Kids will throw a fit. I promise. Every parent I talk to, I know is in the boat of, oh, but my kid will respond this way. Everyone's kid will respond that way. All of our kids, again, if we give them an inch, they're going to take a mile. So if they see us kind of teetering on like, oh, what's the harm? And we give in, they're going to keep learning. I can act like I can do this and get what I want. So I would just say, I'm sorry, the kitchen's closed right now. We'll eat again in an hour. And if they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so hungry. Just need to make sure my son went down. You saw a random lady in the background, but, and so you can just say, I'm sorry, the kitchen's closed. And then again, as with many types of parenting, just distract them to something different. If they're really upset, you can be like, okay, we will have, if they start begging for something, say, that sounds great. Let's have, you can help me get that ready for snack in an hour. Right now we're going to go play. Right now we're getting ready to go to school. Right now and distract them to do something different. But I would say stick to it because they probably, Carrie, I think you might be unmuting. So please chime in.
So my biggest question and what I noticed last night when we started with the first meal and they were basically not willing to eat any, was that they, my daughter said to me, well, I'll just eat when we have a night snack later. And so I was like, now, I feel like they're not playing the system, but basically manipulating it so that they can, not eat now. And which is, I left the food out and they kind of came back after a while and ate some fruit, but it was apparent that my son especially was just banking on having that snack later. And we had blueberries for a night snack and they just monged on all these blueberries. And so I guess my question is should we be removing those snacks or how, or is it just that's just the way it is and I just keep trying to encourage?
So again, we want to always kind of check ourselves on seeing are the choices that we're making for what, when, and where food is offered inadvertently trying to restrict or promote their role on if, whether, and how much they eat. And so I think a bedtime snack, I talked about this a lot last week on Instagram, but I think a bedtime snack can be fine, especially in the beginning of setting up a division of responsibility. If it helps you to not feel like you need to pressure your child to eat more, things like that at the meal, to know that you have kind of this backup opportunity for them to eat again one more time before dinner. Because a lot of parents will be like, this sounds great, but my kid's going to go to bed hungry, wake up in the middle of the night starving, then what am I supposed to do? So if you feel like it helps you not pressure your child to eat at dinner, to have a bedtime snack, set a bedtime snack as close to bedtime as you can so that there's a gap between dinner and bedtime. And in this case, I would say, especially blueberries, is they might love blueberries, but blueberries is not like something that, I mean, they probably did want to eat a lot of them because, you know, they were hungry enough. But if they're already used to having a bedtime snack, I would say keep it for right now while you're changing other moving pieces with at the meal. That said, if you see they're really going to hold out for it, I would, you know, try and adjust and see what time, just for, I mean, every family is different, but what time do you eat dinner and what time is the bedtime snack?
We usually eat like between 5:30 and 6.
Okay.
Sometimes earlier, depending upon like activities. And then the bedtime snack is usually like 7:30. But I even noticed today at lunch, it was the same kind of thing that like I was offering lunch, and then they were kind of eating lunch, but then like, well, we'll have afternoon snack. And then like in accordance with that, like is snack like unlimited? Like, is it, you know, we were having a pouch, this is your pouch, or we're having like, or we're having like this bowl of blueberries, and when this bowl is gone.
I'm 4.
You are 4. You are so big. So no, that's a great question. I think that gets into another question too that we had. Sorry, hopefully I'll be able to like, because it's like very blurry. But so in answer to that, I would say this coming week's homework is going to be really helpful because it's where we put the Love It, Like It, Learning It list into food groups. And then moving forward, we're going to start putting them, if you've looked through that guide I gave you, just start looking through and you'll see that then we're going to start putting those food categories into meals and snacks. So you can kind of start thinking through it. Because the biggest thing that I see parents run into is we offer snack foods and then meal foods. Meal foods are what our kids won't eat. Snack foods are the foods that we know they love. So they fill up on goldfish crackers and graham crackers all day and then come to a meal and they don't want to eat our cashew chicken or something like that. So I would say keep the meals and snacks because, again, that's our role, and that's showing our kids, like, we're not trying to starve you. We're not going to force you to eat. You have regular opportunities to eat, but you're going to be exposed to similar things at meals and snacks. We might not be serving, you know, brown rice noodles and cashew chicken at snack, but they might know that, okay, you're getting carrots and blueberries at bedtime snack. It's not it's not just their Love It food every night at bedtime snack, and keep it changing. You know, some people swear by having yogurt every night. If that's what works for your family, I'm not here to, you know, crush that system that works for you guys. But if you know your kid's favorite food is yogurt, it's probably going to interfere with that nighttime or the dinner meal or something. So keep it variable. If you know that they're learning to like peanut butter toast, give them peanut butter toast alongside a half of banana if they love banana. You know, give them something where it's like they know it's not just their hour for a favorite food. Or if you know they love pouches, I wouldn't save a pouch, you know, as that snack, if that makes sense. So I want to touch on, just in the interest of time, keep moving on that. Okay, I'm going to go back to Allie's question. So Jamie asked, because this is kind of what you were just asking, Kara, about, is it okay to limit the quantity of a snack, i.e. not let them choose how much? For our morning snack, we're often out at a morning activity, so snack time is usually late, within 2 hours, but much more like 1 hour of lunch. So if she's hungry by then, we end up getting a big on-the-go, not as healthy snack and a smaller lunch. I can't push lunch because of her nap. I'm wondering if I should be limiting the quantity of food in that situation. So, but does that teach her the wrong things? So I would say it depends on the kid. You can do snacks as many meals, but in this situation, again, I would say real life is going to happen. Sometimes we're going to go have a can of Pringles with us, and that's what snack is. And we know that it's not offering the Love It, Like It, Learning It type thing. When you can plan to have a smaller amount of the Love It food, and especially on this situation, I think like when you're out and about is one of the easiest times to limit Love It foods because you only have so much with you. So I know it's way easier to like have the whole bag of goldfish crackers in the diaper bag because it's like so nicely packaged right there. But if you can, you know, like I keep our little reusable bumpkins in the car, I keep them everywhere. So even if it's me just pouring from that bag in the car and like putting something in there, put a tangerine in there with it, it's like, well, this is all we have. We're going to eat lunch in an hour. But I would say try and limit it, or say, hey, you know, this is the goldfish crackers that we have for this week. I know you're going to want to have them for snack again. We're not going to eat all of them right now because we're going to have lunch in an hour. So I think it's okay to teach them, like, you don't need to fill up on just this. And if you can, you know, offer something else alongside it, as if you're still hungry, you can have, you know, this clementine, or you can have this box of raisins, or something different rather than just that Love It food. So that'll kind of come up too in that post on like when to, like how to approach endless amount of Love It foods. But do be conscious of, like, kids generally do best if there's like 2 to 3 hours between meals and snacks. This can vary. Some kids, you know, need more mini meals, and they do better with like 4 to 5 smaller type meals that almost all look like snacks. But again, try and blend those food groups. Like my kids, I know that they want some sort of starchy carb like every day, but I'd rather give it at lunch when I know it's part of something else, rather than like at snack when I know they're just going to fill up only on that, if that makes sense. So sorry, I haven't looked to see if Jamie is on here. So Jamie, let me know if that made sense. No, doesn't look like you're on here, but hopefully that kind of helps. And I know a lot of this, like, there's always going to be real life. So as you get more comfortable and confident with this, you can adapt to those situations of like, hey, you know, I forget how she phrased it, but it's like a big on the go, not as healthy snack. So I'm going to just use like a goldfish bag as an example. Not that that's like a terrible snack, but just because I know it's a very common one. So hopefully that kind of helps. But in the post that I'll link on what to do if your kid only eats Love It foods, I think I specifically used the goldfish cracker example. So that might be helpful to read for any of you interested. And I'll also be linking it in a couple weeks when we talk more about that. Going back to Allie's question, before we discovered your approach, we told our daughter if she tried something new, she could have a treat for dessert. Now we're stuck on, she repeats, if you try something new, you can have a treat all the time. How do we backtrack this, and can you explain why bribery pressure is counterproductive? Yes. So Allie, I'm not sure if you're on the call. Sorry, I have to keep going around. Oh, okay, perfect. Sorry. So great question. So one, again, I can post a link that will be coming up in like 2 weeks, I think, on parenting feeding styles, and it goes through every one of them. So just in the interest of time, I won't talk too much on like pressure and bribery and things like that, because it talks about like bribing, pressuring, encouraging, like some things that seem like mildly offensive to things that we kind of know, like, yeah, I probably shouldn't be doing that. But I'd encourage you to read that post because it's very helpful. But for this, that is so common. I would just say, know that like children are so adaptable. Their brain's ability to adapt and their neuroplasticity to like relearn things is very good. So it's harder for us to rewire ourselves to think this is not how this feeding relationship goes, and just change the way you talk about it. So now I would say, something as simple as like at the mealtime, one, maybe don't say anything. And then if she starts saying like, if I try this, do I get to have a treat? I would just say, hey, we're going to start doing things a little different. I don't think that that's the healthiest thing for our family. And so from now on, if you want to try it, I think that's awesome. I love seeing you try new foods. If you don't want to try it, that's okay too. You're allowed to take time to learn to like that. Just keep repeating that as many times as you need until she realizes this is not the cause and effect it used to be. Because she will learn like this is not how my parents respond anymore. But she's going to need you to help like retrain her mind in doing that. So I would just try and walk through it in that way and just acknowledge like, hey, mommy learns new things every day, and I learned that maybe that's not the healthiest thing for us. We're not going to do it that way anymore. And then, too, I think with that is it's important to share when she is going to get a treat now, because she's might be thinking, well, if that's the case, when am I ever going to get a treat? So now you can say, we're going to have a treat, Friday, Saturday, Sunday nights, but we're not going to do it that way, the way we used to do it or something like that. And then you can kind of tell them when treats might be available, but just so she knows she doesn't have to earn it. But in terms of just touching on real quick about bribery and pressure, when we go back to the very underlying feeding foundation of the division responsibility that we're talking about in week 1, it's trust and control. We need our kids to trust us that we are going to offer food in a predictable way with what and when and where it's offered. With that we also need that they trust us that we're not going to come in and try and pressure or bribe them, because anxiety shuts down appetite. So if you're a child who is a average, or especially with extreme picky eaters, feels a little uncertain with these new foods that you're offering and this new feeding approach that you're rolling out, whether they're aware of it or not with the division responsibility, and they're sitting at the meal and they're not sure, is my mom or dad going to pressure me or bribe me into eating this? They don't have that trust that, hey, I know how meals go. I can trust that once my food is here, I'm not going to be pressured. I'm not going to be bribed. I get to decide when, because that's what their job in the feeding relationship is. They have control over if, whether, and how much they eat. So as soon as we pressure and bribe, again, it overrides what is to be their role and breaks that trust. And equally, we need to trust that they are good regulators of their body. Would our kids exist solely on apple juice and goldfish if we let them? Yes, they probably would. But we're training them to listen to their body and to develop that sense of eating a well-balanced diet. It's not going to happen perfectly in the next 6 weeks. But if we can trust them and give them that control while we, relinquish our, we keep the right of our control over what we are able to control, being the what, when, and where, the whole feeding relationship blossoms from there. So does that kind of help make sense, Allie, with what your question was asking?
Yeah. I think you're explaining like anxiety shuts down appetite. I think because we have anxiety because we want her to try something new so badly or eat a good dinner,
Sure.
So we want it to happen so quickly. So we try and do things that make it happen.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really hard to just let her, if she only eats one bite, then she only eats one bite.
Yes, I totally get that. And with that, and I think it's in 2 weeks, we talk about family style meals. And I could see that coming up with what happened at Kira's meal last night too. So I know we could get into all of this in a lot more depth each week, but I also don't want to overwhelm you guys with like, oh my gosh, we have to do everything different. So just like take it one step at a time. But in a couple weeks, we'll be talking about family style meals and how they may only eat one bite, but like encourage them to dish their plate, and maybe just encourage them to dish one bite. And then if they want more, they know they can have more. But then it's not so much like, oh my gosh, I just pre-plated this plate and, I gave you all this food and you wouldn't touch any of it. Then we're well aware of it. But we can start to see how our kids respond to different foods, and they start instantly getting a lot more excited because they have control over what's on their plate all of a sudden. So then it's not this like, okay, we're just trying to get you to eat what's on your plate. But then we start seeing that they're more engaged. And obviously, they need some assistance up until a certain age. But as we can encourage them to do that, that can be really helpful. I want to touch, I know in the interest of time, we're already over. So let me just make sure this is still recording and I can go for a few more minutes for those of you who are still on the call. But I know we have a few more questions. So I just want to try and touch on them really quick. Oops, sorry, I forgot I can't minimize. So Kira's post on what to do. So I'm going to go to Kira's post just to share it. So if anyone didn't see it last night, Kira said, we're currently offering the meal. My kids aren't eating anything, not even the Love It foods. What do I do? She shared the picture. And then she shared an update that said, she shared it at one point. Maybe I just missed it. Oh, there it is. Update, they both eat the strawberries, the Love It foods, that my daughter popped the edamame out and tried it. My son hasn't eaten anything yet. And so my advice to her, which I encourage you to read in the comment section if it helps, but is, again, with the division of responsibility, as I know this is so hard, trust me, I live and breathe this of my own, especially my oldest. We want our children to learn how to self-regulate. And that is going to help them to learn when food is available, I get to choose if and whether I eat. I also then have to learn to wait. And a lot of parents confuse this with like, that doesn't make sense because we're teaching our kids to be develop hunger and fullness. And then they do feel legitimate hunger 5 minutes after a meal, and we don't give in or we don't feed them. That doesn't really make sense. But the whole principle of this is we want them to learn to eat from the foods that are offered when they're offered so that they can satisfy hunger. We also want them to develop appropriate hunger between meals. So if we give a snack 20 minutes after a meal is over, we let them be hungry at a meal but not eat, not listen to that, I'm hungry, I should eat, go past that point, and then we fed them probably whatever they wanted because they didn't eat what we wanted them to have. And then if it gets too close to the next eating opportunity, it doesn't create enough of a window for them to develop an appetite again. So with this example, I know it's hard, but I would just, I would which we'll talk about in 2 weeks, I would take a step back and from the beginning of the meal, and I know I didn't share this here because I'm not trying to give too many to-dos each week, but I would say you can take a step back and do a family style meal. This is not like a fancy Thanksgiving spread. This would be something as simple as like if it's over at the counter or the stove and you can protect like your children from heat and things like that, let your children decide what's put on their plate, because then you can start seeing progress with what they're willing to like tolerate and interact with and eat quicker than, okay, there's this food in front of them and they're just not even willing to touch it. But the biggest thing I would say here in that moment, because family style meals aren't always realistic, is in this moment is just to say nothing. Just talk to them about their day. You can say, oh my gosh, I just made the best bite. I just put brown rice noodles and chicken and broccoli. But something that came up with Sahel, which I'm not sure if she still will listen right now, but that kind of touches on this was another comment I wanted to share, is sometimes we can say too much. So sometimes we sit there the whole meal, being like, oh, can you count the babies in the edamame pot? And we can do all these cute things, which are great and productive and can help our child learn to like new things. But we don't need the whole meal to be that, because that's not really fun for us. It's not really real life for our kids. And sometimes it's becoming too involved in getting them to eat. And so I would say, if you're sitting there and they're not eating, if they say, I want to be excused because they're not eating anyways and they just want to be up, that's when you can say something like, we're all still eating. If you choose not to eat, that's up to you. But, mealtime is about more than food. So I still want you sitting here with us. Tell me about something funny you did today. Tell me about what the highs and lows of your day was. You can engage them in conversation, because then it's still them developing a life skill, even if they aren't eating. But then you set that boundary of, that's up to you if you want to eat, but we're not going to eat again until, I know Kara was saying it was bedtime snack. We're not going to eat again until bedtime snack. And, snack might not be enough to fill you up. So just make sure, to eat now if you're hungry. And if they don't eat, that's up to them. They're going to learn. But again, they will learn if we stick to the boundaries. If we remain consistent, don't go get them something else out of the fridge or something else to eat, or don't give them something else 5 minutes later. So I'm going to check the questions again. Kara, you said, what happens if grandma or someone beside the parent says something like, once you eat your healthy food, then you can have a treat? I would love to talk about this. This will probably take us a few minutes, especially because relatives and situations like that can take a long time. So if you don't mind, I'll copy and paste this one into a post for next week. And I will address that early on next week, because I know that's something that many people will have a question with. But I would say in your house, when you're in charge, and there's not mothers or mother-in-laws or relatives or whoever it might be saying different, try and establish a new verbiage around things. And then just to make sure, one other thing, okay, it was Sahel's comment about crossing the line. So I know we had a little bit more upfront kind of chat about just kind of the overall how things go on this call each week. So we got a little bit long, but I will try and stick to 45 minutes each week in the interest of all of your time. I know many of you are juggling babies or lives, or well, all of us lives or jobs or whatever it might be. So I don't want to run over every week, but I also want to make sure to get to everyone's questions. So does anyone have any, you can just type, you don't have to type in the chat box. Does anyone have questions about any of the things we talked about today? We're already a little over, so I don't want to take any more of your guys' time, but does anyone have anything else they felt like they needed clarified for today? Okay. Okay, well, I will be posting another questions box in the Facebook group so that you can post your questions for this next week's call, week 2's call next Wednesday. So you can share it there and we can chat through any of the things that come up between now and then. But you guys are all doing awesome. I love seeing your progress and the steps you're making. So let me know by email or in the Facebook group if you have any questions, and I will try and help y'all out there. So thank you guys all for coming today. I'll see you soon.